Welcome to another episode of the Battlefields Bourbon podcast. I'm Jack, joined as always with my co-host Elijah and our reoccurring guest, co-host, Mr. Civil War Travels himself, Aaron Siever. Glad to have you back, Aaron.
I'm glad to be here.
This is an exciting episode, very exciting as we are recording, and when you all are hopefully listening as this comes out, we're in the anniversary of the Battle of Fredericksburg. And that will be our topic of discussion. It'll be a brief overview with a lot of interesting points, facts, and information we're trying to provide, as well as dive into during this episode. So this won't be your typical battle narrative episode we've kind of done. We want to leave this kind of open so we can explore Fredericksburg in the future, and we will do exactly that. But to tie in a little bit with our topic today, Elijah, I'll let you introduce what our bourbon is.
None other than Bowman Brothers Small Batch Virginia Straight Bourbon Whiskey from Fredericksburg, Virginia. This one is their baseline kind of flagship product in terms of their bourbon. This one is just 90 proof, about 6 years old, just a standard small batch, triple distilled in copper distillation equipment. So this one is, pretty well represented here. I mean, they've got a good bottle here, just like we did with the Isaac Bowman port barrel finish and everything. It's got the nice picture in the back of the bottle, so I know you'll appreciate the bottle rating here. But this one is Isaac Bowman, but without the port finish.
Okay.
So if that tells you anything, I mean, it's the same product, but just one doesn't have the finish on it. But yeah, this is named after obviously the Bowman brothers themselves. So you're looking at John, Abraham, Joseph, and Isaac all together. I don't know if we went into this on the last time we featured a Bowman product, but these guys were all militiamen in the American Revolution in Virginia. So local to us.
Shenandoah Valley.
Yeah, Strasburg area, Bowman's Crossing, that kind of thing. That's all them. So yeah, a little bit of local history for us, but given that the current distillery is over in Fredericksburg, can't pick a better one to tie into this episode. So we'll give it a little pop here.
Great pop.
I don't know, that one was a little lackluster.
Okay, it was a terrible pop. I'm excited because this Bowman Brothers was my first bottle of bourbon I ever purchased. A couple of years ago, maybe a year ago.
That's what got you into the whole thing.
Well, I was on a mint julep kick, and that was my introduction to bourbon. But that story's for another day. And I went to the ABC store, and I was trying to buy bourbon. I don't think I was talking to you yet about my purchasing. I wasn't using you as a resource, which I should have done. And I picked up the Bowman Brothers bottle. It was probably the only one on the shelf. And I may have seen the port finished logo and didn't want to touch that because I didn't want to mess up my mint julep recipe. So I picked up that, and I thought it was a cool bottle. So it's probably like a 9.5 or an 8 on my bottle rating because I love it. The Bowman bottles are pretty iconic.
Yeah, the history buff in us, I think, just loves that iconic old-looking label. But yeah, I mean, this one is, you couldn't have picked a better one to get started into bourbon with. One thing I don't think I mentioned was the A. Smith Bowman Distillery is also a Sazerac brand. Mm-hmm. So same as, Buffalo Trace, they're all owned by that same parent company. Don't know if this is true or not. However, I'm going to throw it out there just in case. So if somebody jumps on the episode and says, oh, that's,
have you mentioned this before?
I don't think I did in the last go around, but there is a supposition that Bowman's bourbons are made by Buffalo Trace Distillery. Not sure of the mash bill there. At least distilled twice, and then for that third distillation run is done in the copper pot still in Fredericksburg, which makes it the Virginia Straight product. That
I think you did say this in the other one. I remember you saying it. So
I can't verify that. I'll let somebody else who knows more about it than I do speak up to that, but that's just what I've heard. Regardless, great product, but with that kind of tie-in there, Bowman Brothers is very, very reminiscent of, to me, kind of Eagle Rare, a younger Eagle Rare. It's got that same kind of cherry, fruity, floral kind of nose to it that Eagle Rare has. Obviously not as old, about 4 years shy of being that 10-year, but it has much of the same qualities. But you can obviously tell it's a little younger.
This is a
Same proof
6-year?
and everything. Yes, roughly 6. I mean, with a small batch, you might have some younger barrels, you might have a couple older barrels, that kind of thing. With a small batch, there's no technical definition for a small batch. I know when you tour the Bowman distillery, they will say that I think they put maybe 10 barrels into their small batch or something like that. It's actually a true small batch, whereas other distilleries, like say Evan Williams or something, Heaven Hill, doing Evan Williams, I know they said that they do like maybe 400 or more barrels to make one batch. So there's no cut and dry definition for a small batch. But with that though, speaking of going to the distillery and touring it and that kind of thing, if you ever find yourself in the Fredericksburg area to tour the Battlefield or the distillery, A. Smith Bowman Distillery offers free tours and tastings, complimentary, if you will. So you can just...
That's cool.
Yeah, make a trip out of it. And I mean,
A. Smith Bowman, if you're listening, we still have Salem Church or Second Fredericksburg to do as an episode.
Spotsylvania Courthouse.
As well as Spotsylvania Courthouse. So we're more than welcome to pack up the shop and take it on the road to you all. So just hit the email.
Yeah.
But let's give it a tasting, guys.
You can definitely tell it's got a little
sweet.
A little warmth to it just off of the age. However, it's, I mean, very sweet. Like you said, it's got that nice ripe fruit.
Yeah, I'm getting like sugars and
it's
very sweet.
It's a good one. I would guess that the mash bill's probably pretty high in corn, like most,
Probably.
Buffalo Trace mash
Whoa,
bills
whoa,
are.
whoa,
Whoa. Hey, now.
Can't be throwing that around.
No, I don't know for sure, so I'm not gonna do that to them. But regardless, whoever makes it, they make a great bourbon, and that's all you need to know.
Aaron did not shot this one down like in the Pickett's Mill video, so
Trying to be conservative.
there we go. Yeah, pop this bottle just for this. So
A
this
little more
is exciting.
refined, huh?
No, this is a good pour.
Mm-hmm.
And for a while here in Virginia, we were running on like a little dry spell of some Bowman products.
Still are with the John Jay, which if
we
ever get to feature that one on an episode, that one is, I've got a lot of good things to say.
I have not seen that ever in store personally because I have probably looked, but within the past year, I haven't seen the John Jay.
Haven't seen it in over a year.
Yeah,
as
but
of this episode.
Bowman Brothers was out for a hot minute. Remember, we could only get port finished, and when I saw this on the shelf, the last weekend or whatever, I was like, "This is what we're doing," and now I know what episode we're doing. So, no, this is a exciting one, and
I think for a little while they were dealing with a glass shortage, because obviously, I mean, if those of you listening have any kind of idea of what the Bowman Brothers or any of the Bowman products look like in their bottle. That is a very, very unique bottle. I don't think any other brand or distillery uses that kind of bottle. So, obviously, if they've got a glass shortage, there's not really any other outcome there. So, that's why I guess they had a bit of a shortage there for a little while, just due to the glass supplier or something like that, post-COVID. I know a lot of people were struggling with that, but...
Oh, they got rid of the... I'm looking at our other bottle of Bowman.
They revamped the label.
Well, the little stamp thing they took off.
The tax stamp, yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I will say the new label, the new refined label is... I don't like it as good as the old one.
Bowman, if you're listening.
With the laser etched little
just
barrel. Just
go back a little bit. Just turn the clock back. Do what you were doing about a year ago.
Yeah, the tax stamp and everything. I love that. That's very classy for that bottle.
Yeah, well, let's hop into it, guys. We are in the anniversary of Fredericksburg, this 1862 battle that often just gets I don't think it gets overlooked. I just think people just hold other battles to such a higher, standard in a way. Fredericksburg's freaking massive. I mean, this is the first. Is it the first largest or not? That doesn't make sense, but. The amount of troops engaged, federal troops especially engaged here, is like 100,000 plus. I mean, it's
over
incredible.
130,000 federals.
Crazy numbers.
Confederates were like 75,000?
78,000.
And let's get into that. They're split up, right?
Yeah. If you want So you really have to go back to November to really get into the Battle of Fredericksburg. Every battle seems to be a turning point. This is one of them. It's not necessarily a turning point in terms of the battle outcome or like it changed the war, one way or the other for the North or the South. But it is going to be a turning point. You're going to have George B. McClellan, who, he's been in command of the Army of the Potomac for a long time. Even when the Second Manassas campaign happens, he's still in command of the Army of the Potomac. He's just not fighting that battle because they have John Pope and they're making a new army. Of course, he will take back over September and fight the Battle of Antietam. So he hasn't really done anything since then. So Lincoln is frustrated, and so what he's going to do is he is going to relieve McClellan of command.
What is this, like November 7th, I think? Early November?
November 7th. He is going to place Ambrose Burnside in command. Now, Burnside is actually a pretty good general as far as his tenacity, his quickness, things like that. He's a hard fighter. He is not he doesn't just kind of sit around and hang out. He's not slow. As if you look up slow in the dictionary, George B. McClellan's picture is right next to it. But Burnside is anything but that. However, Burnside, I would not say is the most confident as far as it comes to overall Army command. He didn't want it. He was a McClellan friend.
Turns it down when offered before.
Yeah. And honestly, the only reason that he takes this command, he's actually the gentleman that's sent to tell Burnside he's in command is there to ensure that Burnside accepts the command. He doesn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Because Burnside didn't want to. But they'll ride to McClellan's tent on that morning, and they will meet with McClellan. McClellan knew it was coming. He had already heard there was a guy coming from D.C. He knew what was happening. So he is up. He's actually writing a letter to his wife. And when Burnside walks in, and McClellan, I've got to give him some credit. He will stay on for a few days to kind of help Burnside figure out the dispositions of the army, where his troops are. McClellan was he had already started some movement, but a little late to be starting his movement. But he had started a little bit of movement toward Culpeper in that area. At that point, Robert E. Lee's army, Longstreet's in Culpeper, Stonewall Jackson's in the Shenandoah Valley, around Newmarket, Strasburg, Winchester, all up through there. He is spread out there, so he's kind of on the flank of the Union Army almost. And when Burnside takes over, he's going to quickly realize the plan that McClellan has initially probably isn't going to work. The railroad is not going to be able to support this army. I mean, he's got over 130,000 men. So he is going to make a decision probably to move to Fredericksburg. Before that happens, he's going to talk with Henry Halleck. Bring up Halleck because he is going to play a major role in this battle without even being on the field. Halleck will come and see Burnside, and they will go back and forth about a plan of attack. They don't agree. So Halleck goes back to Washington, says, we'll leave it in the hands of the president. President Lincoln approves Burnside's plan, which is to do a feint toward Culpeper Courthouse and move south toward Fredericksburg and then on down to Richmond. But Lincoln has the little caveat to it. He says, he tells Halleck, he'll tell Burnside, yeah, I think this will work if you move rapidly. Now, you got to think, he's been dealing with McClellan. So he's saying that as a reinforcement because McClellan never moved rapidly.
But anything faster than
McClellan
then is fast enough.
So, but he's telling Burnside, he's like, you've got to move quick because if you don't move quick, it's not going to work. And Burnside will move quick. His army will get to Fredericksburg well before the Confederates. The big problem is Henry Halleck. Burnside lets Halleck know, I need the pontoons from D.C. and Alexandria. I need them. They got to be there. With the speed that he moves, he's going to be delayed like 10 days.
And these pontoons are getting loaded up on boats.
They're supposed to be loaded up.
Down up the Potomac.
Yep. Some are supposed to be coming overland.
Okay.
Some are coming down the Potomac, but they're
not.
Is
this a little similar, and we haven't covered it yet, but is this a little similar to what happens in May of 64, the spring and the summer of 64 with transportation issues with Bermuda 100 and getting
a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit. More or less what happens is the orders are a little bit delayed. No one really knows where the pontoons actually are. They're not where they thought. And when they finally do get them, they didn't give the guys enough time. Woodbury's like, I got to have time.
Yeah.
I got to gather all this stuff. You're wanting all this stuff. I can't get it to you. I can't start out till the 17th. Well, Burnside's already moved. So he's gonna in 2 days, he'll make it to Fredericksburg from his movement. By the 17th, Burnside is in Fredericksburg, but he's got 10 days before those pontoons arrive.
And Jackson's like a week's march away. And,
yeah. Jackson's quite, and Longstreet's at Culpeper Courthouse. When the Union Army arrives at Fredericksburg, there is not even 1,000 Confederates anywhere close to them.
Yeah,
but they can't cross.
That gives them time to get across.
135,000 men can't cross.
Wow.
So that's kind of our setup to why Fredericksburg's going to happen. Those pontoons don't arrive. And when they finally do, Burnside will try a few things. He's going to look at, can I cross at the bottom, south on the Confederate left? Can I cross at the top? And nothing's just going to work out. He's afraid that those units that do cross are going to get cut off.
And the Rappahannock at this point is not fordable.
It's not fordable. It's winter.
And
it had been raining and stuff too. Muddy, snowy. That's another issue with the pontoons. It delays them. Those 10 days is the weather. And the roads are disgusting.
It looks like the only bridge from Fredericksburg to the Stafford County side, that was the one that was burned, destroyed. The one that you'll see in the episode cover photo, actually, the famous photo of Barksdale's Mississippians standing on the edge of that bridge, getting their photo taken by Matthew Brady on the other side, and they're all just kind of standing there posing in a lull in the fire, letting a Union man, I guess, take their picture, and they're just all standing there. You can even, if you zoom in on that picture, I don't know if anybody's ever done that, there's a fella off to the right-hand side that's actually smiling in that picture, which is not something that you see in 1800s photography.
Yeah, I never knew the story with that picture, so.
Yeah, that's Barksdale's Mississippians on the end of the bridge that was blown or burned, destroyed, whatever you want to call it. They're all standing on the end of that bridge embankment, just posing for a picture from the Union side. And then if you look even closer, I guess it's a mill or a water mill, some sort of mill to the left up in the top window. There's two fellas up there of Barksdale's brigade just posted up in the window. But yeah, and then with the map that we're looking at here of the 11th, obviously that's all Barksdale's men there. And there's mainly just a brigade holding the town.
1,600 men maybe.
So Barksdale's guides are in the town.
Yeah, and technically they're really, you could say there's two bridges if you count the railroad bridge.
Yeah.
But both of those bridges have been destroyed. Prior to them entering, before even Burnside gets in, there is a little cavalry battle through there. And that's kind of what the folks have seen. They've seen the armies kind of moving around, but Fredericksburg hasn't really experienced except for this little raid that comes through. And that's actually how Burnside finds out there's no Confederates there other than this little contingent, which is really nothing. But yeah, once Burnside gets there and he's set up along the Rappahannock, he's delayed. He can't do anything. Lee is going to start moving out. Longstreet is not going to move out. It's going to be 4 or 5 days before he even moves out after Burnside's there. And so when Longstreet arrives, he's going to start setting up along Marye's Heights above the city. Wonderful, wonderful defensive position.
And that's modern day, like University of Mary Washington, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and There's a stone wall there, sunken road. There is still a little bit of the original stone wall there, but most of it has been revamped by the National Park Service to give it the look it had in 1862. And then as it goes, Jackson will actually stay in the valley a little bit longer, simply because they're not 100% sure what Burnside's doing. They're not 100% sure that he is completely going to Fredericksburg. Is he going to, because he does make a feint toward Culpeper, which is what stalls the Confederates for a little bit. But once Jackson and Lee realize, hey, he's moving, Jackson will come out of the valley. And that'll actually be Stonewall Jackson's last time in the Shenandoah Valley. He'll cross at New Market Gap, and he'll come east.
Well, he has to go over another gap.
Well,
he's not out of the valley there.
I know he's out at Thornton's Gap, but still,
there you go.
Still, I'm looking at New Market Gap because I like that gap better.
It's a nice gap.
It is.
Good gap.
Good gap.
So, but that's where really the Second Corps of the Army in Northern Virginia will be established. He'll get his nice uniform from Jeb Stuart, and
that was given to him, I believe, at Bunker Hill.
Bunker Hill,
yeah,
and he'll have it on up there, on the mountain.
And there's a good, and this will, I guess, be the book recommendation, or one of the book recommendations, because there's a couple here. One I'm personally reading, Memoirs of the Confederate War for Independence by Harris von Bork. Those of you who don't know who he is, he was a staff officer of Jeb Stuart's cavalry. He actually came to the Confederate States, United States, whatever you want to call it, from Prussia, modern-day Germany, with the intent of joining the Confederate Army. Ended up on Stuart's staff, and has just a fantastic memoir about the war, just very detailed. And we'll talk a little bit more about his recount of the Battle of Fredericksburg. But speaking to Jackson's uniform being presented to him, he was present for that. He speaks very in depth about their adventures to bring him this uniform in the cold and everything in November, and fording a river just to get his uniform to him and everything. And they present it to him, and he at first is obviously a very humble man, so he doesn't know so much about, I don't know if I like this, because it's very flashy and very,
You're talking about Jackson.
Yep, Jackson's like, I don't know
doesn't
how much.
actually put it on.
Yeah, he actually declined it at first because of how just nice it looked, and then they insisted that we're not leaving until you put this on. He tries it on and, walks out through the camp, and all the men are cheering and just like hooting and hollering and just, giving him hell for it. But, I mean, that's where that story comes from. It was in Bunker Hill, Virginia, now West Virginia.
Well, when he arrives in Fredericksburg, Lee and Longstreet are going to notice that uniform, the gilded kepi and all that.
Hadn't seen him since, yeah.
And it's going to be pointed out that he's not, he doesn't look his raggedy self that he has, in prior campaigns. And there's a great relationship between Jeb Stuart and Stonewall Jackson that is definitely worth exploring. They definitely have a special bond. Mm-hmm. which is cool. Jack and I have talked about that before. About I'd love to write a book on it. Just that by itself could be a great book. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, that was actually not to stay on the subject, but that was one thing that von Bork had mentioned, was that Stuart had a relationship with Jackson that not anybody else could pull off. He would pick on him, give him a little heckling here and there. It's like just a friendly little nudging, that if anybody else did that wouldn't fly. Yeah. But Stuart had that kind of charisma to him that he could pick on him a little bit, but in a friendly manner, and Jackson would just laugh it off. And
Jackson gave it back to him a couple times.
Yeah. But that's why I recommend that book. It's just a fantastic window into the lives of those who were there. It's just very candid in terms of just the day-to-day that they lived through that war and that conflict, up until, I guess, von Bork's wounding at Middleburg, I guess, is where that kind of cuts off. But yeah, there's some great information up until June of 1863 in that book that I would recommend everybody check out.
Yeah. December 11th is when you're going to have the night of December 11th. or that early morning, that's when you're going to have the Union Army's going to. The pontoons have arrived. They've been there since like the 27th. They're going to actually at night bring those things down and their equipment down to try to ford the river. Opposing them, you mentioned Barksdale, the Mississippians. There's also going to be a little contingent of Floridians there, who are going to have a kind of a rough time during this. But when they do this, Barksdale doesn't. He doesn't fire on them when they bring the stuff down. They're waiting. They're going to let the Yankees get, quarter of the way across the river before they really start.
Get a little comfortable first.
Yeah, get comfortable. There's no firing, nothing like that. Suddenly, these Mississippians are going to open up, and it's going to be a hellish fire. And you got to think, these are engineers. Yes, they're trained to fight, but these are skilled guys. There's not a lot of backups for these guys on how to build these bridges, how to put the boats in the right way. They've got certain jobs. The 50th, I think it's the 50th New York engineers. I think it's 50th New York. They're gonna get really hammered. They're in the middle, so they're right there at the town. They are gonna get hammered and lose a lot of men during that time, and Barksdale's going to keep it up. And what ends up happening is now you're going to have the first real bombardment of a city. There's like 179 cannons, I think, that are going to open up on the city of Fredericksburg to try to drive the rebels out. It's not going to work. I mean, they're going to destroy a good bit of the city. There's going to be a portion of the city that's just leveled, basically. Mm-hmm. But Barksdale's men, they just hunker down. They pop back up. The Union troops think they've driven them out. They start firing again. And this is all on the 11th and some on the 12th. Throughout those 2 days, there's a lot of heavy skirmishing going on. Barksdale could have simply went back. Once they really started coming across, he could have simply went back and got up in the Confederate line on Marye's Heights and out to the extension. But
chose not to.
What
happens, Aaron?
Huh?
What happens?
Well, he stays there, and we get fighting in the town.
Some of the first
urban
combat. Yeah.
So that is where I would say this is one of our turning points. The first one is going to be before the urban combat, the bombardment of the city.
Well,
it's not the first time a city's bombarded,
no.
But
isn't to that extent
the landing
the opposed
itself,
the
bridgehead. That is the first time a bridgehead is established under fire in the United States, and that happens at Fredericksburg, and then you have the urban warfare.
Yeah, so then and Barksdale's guys are taken to the corners of buildings and the second floors and the basements, and they're hiding, but strategically and purposefully,
inch by inch.
And
block by block, I think, is what they have.
It's block, and not even a movie recommendation. It's terrible, and people hate this movie. But it's my generation, I think, of young historians is Gods and Generals.
Yeah,
and if you just watch the Fredericksburg scene, I don't know. I mean,
I enjoy it. I think
the crossing,
very well depicted.
And then the street stuff. It always stuck with me, and that's what I'm picturing as we're looking at it now.
And it is. Ron Maxwell did a great job in that aspect of Fredericksburg, because on top of it, you have the ransacking. Now there's orders to stop that. There's orders. The generals are saying don't do that.
So let's get to that. But Barksdale's guys,
they're starting. They have to fall back.
They push back and they go back to the Confederate defensive line at the sunken road.
Yep. So now your bridgehead's established, and the town's occupied.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some alcohol involved. Probably some Bowman Brothers bourbon is there.
maybe.
We know there's a distillery there now. But
looting.
There's going to be looting. They're just going to ransack the place, and it's a deplorable thing that happens where the generals are disgusted. Even Burnside's kind of disgusted with it. Because but he's thinking overall stuff. He's got a lot on his plate, and
What's the reason for this? Do we know? Is this something that would have happened if these men had, I don't know, a commander they liked, like McClellan? Like, would they have done something like this if McClellan was in charge, or is this something that was
respect his authority?
I think it just happened, honestly.
And
it's kind of that shark mentality. One guy starts doing it. It's similar to a riot. Things start small and then grow bigger. A couple people do, and then it just becomes a shark frenzy. It not just riots; it happens. Human nature. Mm-hmm. Everybody goes and starts doing the exact same thing.
Yeah,
and it gets out of hand. So I would say that's probably where that started, more or less.
Yeah.
Because Burnside at that point he's not looked down upon. He's kind of in a rock and a hard place. He beat the Confederate Army here and he can't cross. So he's got to revamp all his plans. His plan was to cross at Fredericksburg, not even fight a battle there, and go to Richmond, get on Lee's flank. Mm-hmm. And he can't do that. So now we're at Fredericksburg. So now he's got to force a crossing. The big problem is his orders. He's going to give his orders in writing, and they're not going to make any sense. The Union plan is very simple. We're going to cross at these pontoon bridges. The right side is going to attack the Confederate left, Longstreet, Maury's Heights. They're going to pin those Confederates down. The left side of our army, down here with Reynolds, George Meade, and Gibbon, they're going to attack the Confederate right, where Jackson is, and roll up the Confederate army. That's the simple plan. And they're gonna have Hooker kind of coming in the middle there, but it seems like a very simple plan. However, when Burnside writes his orders, it's very confusing. Sumner, who's on the far right of the Union line, he's got the one of the grand divisions there, the right grand division. He's told to go up and pin those Confederates down and not necessarily. I mean, yes, take the heights, but he's supposed to engage them. Basically, you're supposed to have mass casualties while we do this on the other side. And that's not, I mean, yes, you have 135,000 men or so, but that's not a smart idea. The other problem is the crossing itself. Once those troops are across, they're in the town. The Confederate Army is going to see them. The Federals are going to occupy that plain below Maury's Heights. It's just a massive army. But the problem is when they have to cross, there's some creeks, there's little bridges. They have to cross at a brigade at a time. So when these first attacks happen, they're not happening by division. They're just happening by brigades. That's it. So it's one brigade each time, and it does not change. You'll have, you're going to have Getty, Griffin, eventually Humphreys. You'll have Hancock, Sturgis, French, Howard. All these guys are going to attack Maury's Heights during this time, and they have to get it brigade by brigade by brigade. A.A. Humphrey, I think, actually makes one of the best quotes of the Civil War during this. Before he crosses, or as he's crossing, he's leading his men on horseback, and he says he felt like a 16-year-old girl about to go to her first ball. And that's a pretty, and Humphrey writes some really good memoirs of Gettysburg and things like that. Mm-hmm. So A.A. Humphrey's been around, but that quote, I mean, I don't know that I would feel that way, because you look at the Confederate side and you think about the dispositions they have with the artillery just at Maury's Heights. Lee actually did not like those dispositions originally from Alexander. He actually says he thinks the guns would be better back, and Alexander says, "Oh, okay." He never moves the guns, keeps them where they're at. He just kind of, placates the commander a little bit, and then he tells the guy, "Don't redig the trenches, leave the guns where they're at," which works out. But Alexander, we have Humphrey going, "I feel like a girl going to a ball," and then Alexander's over here going, "It's not, a chicken can't live on that field. Yeah. You give me enough ammunition."
Yeah, and I think to talk a little bit about a modern day view of the site, and we'll talk a little bit more about preservation, but the town backs straight up to the sunken road practically. Yeah. So you don't get that field of view. I mean, you had A lot of obstacles in the way, not modern roads and
Little
houses and
creeks.
7-Elevens, but yeah, you had a mill race, a fairgrounds. The fairgrounds fence was an obstacle, and then as well as the Confederates had the stone wall, with them being in a sunken road. So it was just a recipe for disaster.
Which brings up another point: the stone wall, and they dug a trench behind it. This is kind of your opening to that trench warfare, more than yes, they were in a sunken road and used that natural road at Antietam, but this is a formidable trench, formidable wall. So there's another piece,
And they're 3 deep.
they're 3 deep.
Yeah.
Where we're starting to kind of change our war aims. The other part of this that kind of gets lost is Lincoln really needs a victory. Yes, we had Antietam. What did he do after Antietam? The Preliminary Emancipation Proclamation. That's supposed to be signed January 1st, 1863. We're in December of 62. This needs to be a victory. Now, Lincoln will go ahead and sign. It doesn't really change that outcome for the most part, but Lincoln will go ahead and sign that in January. But with a victory of this, it just takes a whole new meaning. We might not have the Civil War as far down, 2 more years as we do, after Fredericksburg. But yeah, I think also Longstreet says, "Give me enough ammunition and I'll kill them all."
Yeah.
So the Confederates are very confident. They're not a nervous schoolgirl getting ready to go to their first ball.
If you're right, that
And it
quote
makes
is
sense.
crazy.
It makes sense, I'd be nervous too if I'm riding.
Well, when I first read that quote, I was like, "Oh, then he
excited.
dies." Well, and then he dies. But no,
No, he makes it.
yeah.
Yeah, Humphrey's great memoirs.
And the Confederates had their position just figured out. You've got that at the sunken road with the wall, and then, as you said, 3 deep. For those that don't know what that means, there was 3 rows deep of Confederate soldiers with rifles ready to fire.
Yeah, basically.
And they're just
Hand them.
handing one off to the next guy. He shoots, hands it back.
Again,
to
I will
reload.
reference Gods and Generals. They depict that in that film as
And
well.
they do a
job
very
with
good
that.
job with that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out Ron.
So it's just a
That film's
constant,
good.
a constant rain of fire. There's no reload time there, because as you're firing and passing it back, the next rifle is already reloaded and ready to go. So you just have a constant pouring of fire onto
It's a sheet of fire coming off that ridge.
you can't attack that. And they had said, at least in I think von Bork's memoirs, they said wait until they're at least 30 to 40 yards away before you fire. So they're already too close. They're well within range of rifled muskets for sure, but so close that if you turn and run at that point, you're still within range.
Oh yeah,
And then
you're
it's
just
devastating.
screwing yourself one way or the other, and it's
Think about it too, Aaron. They're basically, like Aaron said, they're feeding them in piecemeal because they have to by brigade. So
Yeah,
each brigade that's getting slaughtered and pushed back, the next one that's going in is then going over those soldiers just laying in that wasteland. That it's basically a no man's land in a way.
so each brigade is at a disadvantage because they've got more obstacles, being the bodies that were
and then
charging in front of them.
the obstacles that already existed, like we discussed.
Exactly.
So yeah,
And you'll have I've got to point them out because I've got a little Irish in my blood, but the Irish Brigade, they will attack. They will put little things of boxwood in their caps as they charge. They'll actually get farther than a couple of the other units. They'll get a pretty good ways up there, but it's still the same. The outcome is still the same. Now, while all that's happening, some other things happen off to our right, where Jackson is. First off, and I know you know this guy, Elijah. You have the young man by the name of John Pelham. Pelham. Sorry, I always say
Pelham.
I always say Pelham.
Boy,
Pelham.
you're about to get destroyed.
Yeah, Pelham. Anyway,
The Gallant?
The Gallant.
The Gallant.
Now he gets that name after this battle. During this battle, according
I thought, was it Stewart referred to him as that early on?
Lee.
Yeah, he gets that at this battle.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
so-
wrong. I'm
yeah,
wrong.
so he-
Shut up,
Von
Jack.
Bork
He comes out. He comes out with one gun and starts just pounding the Union Army. I mean, he's
He pushed forward with
Yeah.
that gun by himself.
Yeah.
Actually,
and it
pretty-
becomes Pelham's corner.
Well, so to set it up, like if you're sitting at a table with somebody, like Aaron and I are sitting at this table we're recording at right now. I'm the Confederates. He's the Federals. Pelham is sitting at the end.
He's Elijah.
Yeah,
to our
he's not. Pelham's one lone gun is not just one gun firing down with the Confederates being silent. He's moving to a position, like you said, Pelham's corner, which is just insane. Like Medal of Honor worthy in a sense.
Yeah. And the
It's
corner
only-
is still there,
Yeah.
barely. There's a cannon that sits at the corner.
Is it all developed around it?
Oh, yeah.
God, what is going on out there?
And he's what 22, 23?
Yeah, he's very young.
around
And
that-
he's
that
killed
age.
months later,
Months
and
later.
Kelly's Ford.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lee refers to him, doesn't refer to him by rank or anything, and just says the gallant Pelham.
And this is interesting too in von Bork's memoirs because obviously they're in the same, they're in Stuart's cavalry. They know each other very well. He talks about Pelham being just so eager to fire on the Federals with his artillery. He's just like, let me at him. And von Bork is saying how he's wanting to kick this ball off by being the one to open up the artillery fire, while Jackson's saying, no, hang tight, just wait. And then it gets to the point, von Bork at this point in the battle is so just anxiety-ridden because he thinks the Federals really have the advantage here with the fact that they've made it across the river, they're amassing down by the banks, they're getting ready to attack. He himself is a little panic-stricken, and he tells Jackson just his fears and stuff, and just, hey, like, this is what I think of the situation. And in his memoirs, he says, upon my mentioning this feeling to Jackson, the old chief answered me in his characteristic way. Major, my men have sometimes failed to take a position, but to defend one, never. I am glad the Yankees are coming. He then gave me orders for Stuart to employ his horse artillery and open fire on the enemies at once. So at that point, Pelham opens fire with his artillery. But, I mean, that just shows you how confident Jackson is in his men to hold the position that they're at and how strongly fortified they are on these heights surrounding Fredericksburg. But
Well, and before we get into the attack that's going to happen there, another point about Pelham is, you see, we've got the maps here. We can see Doubleday.
mm-hmm.
Doubleday is held back 6,000 men because of one gun,
Yeah.
because of Pelham.
Well, and it totally gives away.
It gives
then
away
what
what's
the Federals
happening.
are doing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and notice on the map here, I don't want to say anything's not saved because based off this map we have, it looks like the Central Virginia Battlefield Trust, so CVBT, shout out
Yes.
Central Virginia Battlefield Trust,
Yep, Tim
has,
Talbert.
yeah, they have some preserved land there. And I looked it up, Aaron and Elijah. American Battlefield Trust website says as early as 1862's Peninsula Campaign, Cavalry Chief Jeb Stuart was referring to his premier artillerist as, quote, the gallant Pelham for his bravery. At Fredericksburg, Pelham's daring prompted Robert E. Lee to remark, "It is glorious to see such courage in one so young."
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
Well, so it didn't count until Robert E. Lee.
I guess. Okay, I'll go with you on that.
Commanding General.
Sorry,
says it
ABT.
makes it-
Aaron
it
Siever
makes it
says Lee.
Yeah.
Lee is the.
So I think.
So Slaughter. So we're now moving to what? This is the southern end of the battlefield,
southern end of the
technically.
battlefield,
Southern,
Prospect Hill,
also known as Dead Horse Hill.
Dead Horse Hill, and in between that you also have we have Maury's Heights, you have Lee's Hill, and then Prospect Hill. Prospect is where Jackson is.
Do they call it Jackson's Hill? Like on a.
Von Bork refers to it as
I
that.
think
Okay. Well, Von Berg says
But that's
it
not.
was,
But that's not present day.
Yeah.
Whereas
Prospect
present day,
Hill is
Lee's
what-
Hill still
yeah.
exists. Jackson's Hill is not necessarily referred to
Yeah,
as such.
it's called Prospect or Slaughter Pen.
One fun fact, at least, just to interject about
I like fun facts.
Stuart's horse artillery, and if you're an artillery enthusiast, like some of us are, von Bork mentions in these memoirs that one of their guns, he specifically mentions what it was, and it was a Blakely gun.
Mm-hmm.
Those of you that don't know what that is an English artillery piece imported from England, something that's very rare to hear about in the American Civil War, and their artillery shells are much even rarer to find as archaeologists or metal detectorists. But that one was a gun that was present at the Battle of Fredericksburg, and von Bork mentions that it was disabled just due to the overwhelming artillery fire from Stafford Heights. But the fact that one of those guns was there is just a cool piece of information just to see, because it's not an artillery piece that you hear about often just because it's being an imported gun from England. Anyhow.
Yeah, that is they're cool guns. If you ever get to see one, they're pretty neat looking.
The shells too. They're a unique looking piece of artillery.
If you look, we see the line. We know about Maury's Heights. We know Longstreet's there. Lee has got some of Longstreet on Lee's Hill, but the hinge between Jackson and Longstreet is going to be John Bell Hood. Now Hood is going to split his divisions, his brigades up to be able to support either Longstreet or Jackson, depending on how he does. And Lee's going to go over that a lot with him and expect him to be ready to go. Lee's also going to talk to Pickett, and he's just going to basically give Pickett dispositions of, this is what I need you to do. Watch what Hood's doing. The other big problem, and I know, Jack, you know a good bit about this, I think, is the gap between the Confederate lines and Jackson's lines. The swamp area.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So it was deemed, that it wasn't of military use. Like, nobody's coming through there.
This is on the Confederate right?
On the Confederate right. So the Confederate high-ups said, they're good. Yeah, that we don't have to worry about this swamp area. Nobody's coming through there. Well, there's this guy who gets a lot of fame later, George Gordon Meade. Guess where he decides to go?
The swamp.
The swamp. He comes right up through there. And honestly, this is, to me, probably the Union's greatest chance to actually do something. The problem is he's unsupported. There's no support that comes up.
It's just Meade's guys.
Just Meade's guys. Later, Gibbon's guys will come up and try the same thing. Again, not supported. Not to poo-poo on John Reynolds too much on that one, but I don't know what happened there. Reynolds is a great general, so I don't know if because Doubleday has had to be pulled back because of Pelham, that could be a factor in it. But heavy fighting is going to occur right there along the railroad area, and what is now known as the Slaughter Pen Farm is what we call it. And the American Battlefield Trust has done a great job of helping preserve that.
Over 200 acres, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I know you've looked into it a little bit, Jack, with the Slaughter Pen Farm.
Let me pull up a little bit of history on the Slaughter Pen Farm.
Great trail. If you've never been there, definitely go out there and walk it. It's more of an open area than what we see at Fredericksburg. And it's a really good, right up against the railroad. You're going to have Meade attacking Gregg and Lawton and Early's troops there. Gibbon eventually just down the line is going to attack Lane. It's going to be very heavy fighting there. It's kind of going to be, as much as I hate to say it, it's going to be similar to like a Gettysburg type thing for Meade, except that, the attack, basically because the attacks are not supported. If you look at Pickett's charge or Pickett Pettigrew Trimble charge at Gettysburg, it ends up not really being supported as some of the units don't come forward. You're going to have a very similar thing happen here, although I would say George Meade is probably a better general than George Pickett.
Who fills the gap?
I believe it's
early,
going
right?
to be early, and then you'll have Tolliver coming up toward Lane.
Taliaferro? No, I'm just kidding. Tolliver.
And D.H. Hill is in reserve. He's going to come up as well. Really the worst, I hate to say this, but the worst general on that side, he's going to be new to command, is going to be Brockenbrough. He never really develops as a good commander. Everybody else there, Archer, Lawton, Gregg, Thomas, Lane, Pender, Early, they're all pretty stout fighters. Not to say Brockenbrough's not, but he's just not. He's not at their level. So that's your weak point on Jackson's side. And I guess luckily for the Confederates, he was all the way to the right near Hamilton's Crossing. So
Yeah, this is some terrible fighting, though. I mean,
yes,
like when people think Fredericksburg, they obviously think Murray's Heights and the Sunken Road and things like that. But
There's
I mean,
so much more further.
this
south.
piece gets lost.
this gets lost and forgotten, but this is really where some heavy combat takes place. I mean, 5 Medal of Honors are awarded to federal troops just within the slaughter pen farm, which is crazy. So this is just some tenacious, terrible fighting, but it's a part of the battle, and it often gets overlooked. I mean, it wasn't until early on in me exploring other battles besides the ones in the valley, I learned that there was this whole other side of the battlefield, which I thought was wild.
Yeah, and when you go out there to drive the battlefield, it takes you a little bit to get there. The battlefield's quite large.
Quite separated.
And it's very separated. You can go up. I mean, you can go up to Lee's Hill. You can go to the slaughter pen farm. Again, shout out to ABT on saving that. That's a huge save.
Yeah, a little bit of numbers here. In 2006, CWPT, which is a Civil War Preservation Trust,
Now ABT.
which became the Civil War Trust, which became the American Battlefield Trust, which became Intergalactic Preservation Organization.
So they haven't
They
changed
just
it
keep-
yet.
just
Eventually,
keep
that
going.
name will change again.
No. I think they're, I don't know. I mean, the World Battlefield Trust.
Maybe. You never
maybe.
know.
You know.
Go worldwide.
Can't
guys.
stop Edelman. A $12 million project this was. This was 205 acres of the slaughter pen farm, also known as the Pearson Tract. For folks in the preservation world, that is normally the name of the landowner they're buying it from. Yeah, 205 acres, crazy stuff. I mean, this is like all that fighting we were just talking about takes place a lot on this property. Gibbons guys and Lane and Hill's men. 5,000 casualties are going to take place just on that field alone. And it was the North's best chances of winning the Battle of Fredericksburg was here at Slaughter Pen Farm. Slaughter Pen Farm was considered the largest remaining unprotected part of the Fredericksburg battlefield. And it was also the only place on the battlefield where a visitor can still follow the Union assault from December 13th, beginning to end, which is pretty impressive. Like we said, with the
Trail is
stuff in the
awesome.
town, you got to drive through streets and neighborhoods and parking lots just to get to within feet of
Certain points.
yeah. If you can only probably go 30 yards towards the town from the stone wall before you hit development. So this was huge. 2006 comes along, they get a ton of grants. ABPP, which is the American Battlefield Protection Program, brought some grants in for that. I think the Central Virginia Battlefield Trust is stated here by committing $1 million toward the preservation of the slaughter pen farm. In addition to all of this, ABT has been able to preserve 5 additional parcels, totaling 40 acres. So now this adds up to about 248 acres of preserved land at Fredericksburg, done through nonprofits like the ABT and Civil War Preservation. Central Virginia Battlefield Trust. Amazing work, and
awesome.
it's just I've never been to the slaughter pen farm. I know that there's been some living history events hosted there over the year.
I was going to say that. Like, if you get a chance to go out there, I don't think they're doing one this year.
Yeah.
It might be every other year, but I personally have not seen. I've seen the pictures. I've been on.
Have they torn down the
field.
houses there?
I haven't been there in a little while, so I don't know for sure. I know there was some stuff in the works on
But
that.
I mean, it's 200 acres of like pretty much
it's just
flat open land.
open farmland, yeah.
And you can just picture these attacks taking place all on this ground. The early morning fighting between Lane's men with Gibbons' men, and then just the back and forth, the flank attacks between Confederates to the Federals on that property. It's a pretty, from what it looks like, you can get a pretty panoramic interpretation of that side of the battlefield's fighting.
Absolutely. And I think they've updated their signage out there as well. When I was out there years ago, they had signs out through Civil War Trail signs through the battlefield. And so I'm sure they've added to it since then. But I'm happy to say I was kind of one of the first ones to get to walk on there. Once it became I think
it's paid off
7,
now.
8. Yeah,
I know they were fundraising for a
there's
while.
a lot of appeals
to buy.
going out.
$12 million is a little crazy.
But you know what? For what that is,
Well, Fredericksburg, I mean,
That's crucial.
money is money.
Yeah.
It is what it is. It's paper.
One
That's that in the end. That's hollow ground.
hallowed.
Yeah.
Hallowed ground. Well, there is some hollows there.
One thing to mention
It's
too
hallowed ground.
about Meade's charge through that swampy bottom. Von Bork, obviously, as we talk about this memoir, also mentions that he and Stewart are kind of surveying that end of the Confederate lines, looking for an opportunity for them to attack the Federals that are just stuck on the bank. And they're eager to just, hop their works and just run down through the plain and attack them. And this swampy bottom is one of those spots that he thinks is a formidable area with the fewest obstacles available.
Yeah.
Obviously, some farm fences and stuff, until they realize this is a wet ground. Horses' hooves are going to get stuck in the mud. We can't do this. But all the while, Stewart is just fascinated with just wanting to attack and go on the offensive here. Whereas, Lee and Jackson and the other commanders are going to have to rein him back in and say, we can just fight this defensively and be okay. We don't need to attack them. And I think they even do a little bit of an attack in the evening.
Yeah.
Although it was, and Von Bork mentions this, that this was, by the time they eventually carried out that attack, it was much too late. They should have acted sooner for it to be really effective. But that's that ground right there where Meade is attacking across that swampy bottom, is where, if you end up reading this memoir, he is discussing is that same ground there.
And really, like you guys were saying earlier, you're kind of leaving this open because really you can break this battle down.
Oh yeah,
I
we're
mean,
not
you
even
can-
hitting
you
the
can
surface.
Do Maury's? You can just the crossing. You can talk about the Floridians there at the crossing with the skirmishing and.
Well, you're giving it away now.
You
We
know,
can't
you can
save
talk
it
about
if you're
that.
talking
no,
about
I'm
it.
saying you can
so
talk
much
about
more
that.
to go into.
You
For
can
sure,
talk about
yeah.
that because that's a little contingent there that nobody. I mean, there's guys from Florida fighting in Fredericksburg.
Yeah.
You can break it down to what happens in the middle with Hooker and all the way. We could go into more detail with Meade and Gibbon.
Well,
Von
what?
Bork, all
So
that.
after this is the 13th. What happens next?
So really, at that point, the Confederates are expecting on the 14th, 15th that there are going to be more fighting. But by the 16th, Burnside's pulled back. The devastation, just to put it in numbers here, we've got more than 13,000 casualties on the Union side. We have less, so about 4,500, maybe 5,000 on the Confederates total.
Yeah.
Now, Lincoln will say that with the amount of men, and if you do the math, with the amount of men that Burnside had he continued to attack and the casualties stayed the same, eventually
Yeah.
a war of attrition would have worked, but at devastating cost. And this is already a debacle.
And this was something that Von Bork and the Confederate generals themselves kind of mentioned, was that Burnside was, as it was, already kind of just expending lives frivolously. And they said that all the while he's kind of taking refuge in his headquarters away from the battlefield, kind of ostracizing him for, it's easy for you to send these men to die while you're sending these orders from a house far off from the battlefield, away from the danger. But that ends up being part of it. Was the damage done already was more than enough, so there's no sense in wasting more lives for maybe a victory.
Yeah. And that actually brings up another point of, you asked about what happens after this. That night, the 13th, you're going to have a gentleman by the name of Kirkland who's going to become the angel of the battlefield, is what they call him. The cries of the wounded on the Union side are terrible.
And get to him real quick.
And he's going to go across that wall.
South
with
Carolinian,
canteens,
right?
South Carolinian.
So this is back in town. I mean, close
Back in
to the
town,
town.
up in Maury's Heights. He's going to cross the wall, and he's going to go and he's going to give water. And he's actually going to get cheered by both sides. They're at first he gets shot at, of course, but then eventually every time he crossed the wall, the shooting stopped. he was helping them win, and then some shooting would resume but as soon as he was coming back across, they'd stop. And number one, we were talking about Medal of Honor things, whether he's a Confederate or a Union soldier, that's Medal of Honor worthy right there. That's brave to go across that, and it doesn't matter what uniform they're wearing. He saw a human in need and went over there.
Yeah.
And that just speaks volumes to how personal the American Civil War is. How it can touch you, even if you're a soldier on the opposing side. Your humanity doesn't completely.
Oh yeah, these were human beings. They
were
weren't
citizens.
just bodies.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think there's a great Lee quote from this battle that Lee, after witnessing this terrible, battle take place, Lee says to Longstreet, "It is well that war is so terrible, or we would grow too fond of it."
Yeah.
So that was one quote that if you read it really quick, you're like, what is Lee saying? We would like war, but it's like, the whole idea and when you break it down and actually look at it and then realize the context, it's said perfectly.
Yeah.
So anything else, Fredericksburg? I mean,
like I said, you could really break this down even into more. I mean,
well, we can. I mean, and diving into the aftermath is a totally different episode and
yeah.
how it ties into Hooker coming on board and then the Mud March and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
I mean, we could. That's a whole different.
Now we talked about the mentality of the Union Army before that, with whether they were, they ransacked Fredericksburg. Is that because they don't really respect Burnside, or is that because they miss McClellan? Whatever. By the end of this battle, they don't really respect Burnside.
Oh yeah,
especially after that. Yeah.
After that, it's basically he is willing to sacrifice as many lives as possible to win this battle.
Yeah, I mean, there's the Federals are coming out with 12,653 casualties, just to send them to the slaughter. For maybe getting the dub in a way. Confederates will walk away with 5,000 in comparison to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just out of, Confederates had about almost 80,000. Some estimates get down to the 70,000 range of troops engaged. And then, reporting for combat technically is 122,000 for the Federals. Estimated engaged is around 114,000, but still. Yeah. I mean, but these are the odds.
These are massive numbers.
These are the odds that the Confederates are coming up against most of the war.
Yeah.
For the first year and a half or however long this is into it, this is nothing crazy that they haven't come up against. Yeah. Well, I mean, size-wise, yes, but the difference, There
are a few battles where the Confederates outnumber.
Oh, my God. Yeah. I cannot name one.
Well, here in the Valley in 62, Jackson...
Oh, well.
Individual armies, though.
Okay. Fair enough.
And the other one would be Pea Ridge. Pea Ridge, Confederates outnumber them vastly.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's another
way
topic.
Out west.
Yep.
Yeah.
Way out west.
Way out
Arkansas.
I feel like we should do an episode about Pea Ridge.
I really think we should.
One of these days.
Coming soon.
Soon.
So
Well,
you can get to talk about that.
There's a we gave the book recommendation.
But there's another one.
Yeah.
Aaron, do you have another one?
I do. Shout out to my friend. I love this guy as far as a tour guide at Fredericksburg, Mr. Frank O'Reilly. He wrote a book called The Fredericksburg Campaign, Winter War on the Rappahannock. Great book, lots of detail. Frank is a park ranger at the battlefield, been on some tours with him, and he was a former drill sergeant, I believe. You can tell when he really gets amped up because you can hear him pretty far away. He was given a tour at Chancellorsville one time, and I was on the other end of Jackson's flank attack and could hear every word he said just clear as day. So he when he gets amped up, it's great. But yeah, Frank, if you're listening,
he's not.
He might
maybe
be,
he is.
But Frank, if you're listening, great book. I really enjoyed reading through this. A lot of great information in there. He really gets into the nitty gritty of what's happening in Fredericksburg.
Well, we gave Gods and Generals was kind of a movie recommendation, for
Yeah.
this.
It's a movie.
Well, no. Yeah, and it does depict Fredericksburg, which is cool.
It does.
A second one I want to shout out is Fredericksburg, a documentary film, which was, I think it was the Park Service film. It's got Scott Hartwig in it, I think.
Good author.
And there's another film that goes with it, making the pontoon bridge for Fredericksburg, which is like kind of a behind the scenes for that film.
Are those on History Fix?
Oh my gosh, Aaron. Great. Yes, they
Okay,
are.
I thought so.
If you wanted to watch those, which I would highly recommend, and that's not just me saying it to say it. When I first got History Fix, which was about a year ago, that was like the first thing I watched. First, I watched Antietam, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
And then I watched the Fredericksburg film, and oh my gosh, I love that Fredericksburg film. And more important, I love the behind the scenes aspect. See what went into making those pontoons and bringing them down for those scenes they shot for the documentary for the Park Service film.
Oh, it's crazy.
It's a great, and it's only about 30 minutes to watch that, but it's like, they followed it to a T, how those pontoon bridges would have been built.
I think the Fredericksburg one is an hour and the pontoon one's like 30 minutes.
Yeah, something like that. And those are on History Fix. And we've talked about our friends over at History Fix in these past couple episodes, specifically for Fredericksburg. Here's something you can watch directly with it. And if you wanted to go and watch some History Fix videos, specifically these Fredericksburg one, you listeners of the Battlefields and Bourbon podcast, get a 7-day risk-free trial. That's if you use code Battlefield. That's BATTLEFIELD. Battlefield. Code Battlefield. You get 20% off your first annual subscription, and with that, you get a 7-day risk-free trial. If you wanted to just try it out, you get a 7-day risk-free trial, and if you love it, you'll love it. Go ahead and get it. Just go ahead and get History Fix.
Get it.
Use code Battlefield. That's BATTLEFIELD. You can watch the Fredericksburg documentary film, the Park Service film. You can watch more.
Oh,
And
so
you
more.
can watch the pontoon. You can watch the Fridays at the Front videos that Civil War Digital Digest is partnering with the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation, the wonderful sponsor of this podcast, and preservation group of the Historic Bell House, which the podcast is based out of. Partnership on those. Those are called Friday at the Fronts. They're great 2 to 3 minute videos that are on there on History Fix that you can watch about some amazing sites here in the Shenandoah Valley. So if you don't have History Fix, what are you waiting for? Because Aaron's got it, I got it. Elijah, I'm not even going to ask you.
But a lot of great stuff, like you said. And it's
not just
all
Civil War. Oh my gosh.
There's World War I too, and that as you become a 40-year-old man, my wife sent me this meme. You're either a drunk or you're playing with your World War II or Civil War stuff, reading books and stuff.
There you go.
Historian.
And watching videos.
That's
Are we both?
How can I be both?
Well, yeah,
I'm
you
22.
I think you can, Jack. If you
Give us time.
you were giving me a hard time about my pronunciation of words. You kind of struggled. Yeah, so you
got him again.
kind of struggled there through Battlefield.
I was even reading it off of
he
the
was
phone, and I
reading
couldn't
it.
even say
So
it.
I can't help it with my Valley accent. Sometimes words don't come out right.
Yeah. Well.
And
Well.
I don't know if am I allowed to give a shout out to myself on my
Yeah, go check out Aaron's Civil War Travels.
YouTube.
Do you have a Fredericksburg video?
Yes.
All right, we
course
will.
he does.
We
He has
will
everything.
share that probably to our Facebook to check out one of Aaron's Fredericksburg videos. Go check out all of Aaron's other videos. He's done videos from. Have you been out? Have you done your ones of Vicksburg?
We did Vicksburg.
So you've got from Vicksburg all the
Oh,
way.
That's an
We've
episode
got
too.
Alcatraz, California.
Oh,
Oh,
so yeah,
Far
you're
west,
coast to coast,
I'm
baby.
coast to coast, man.
Yeah, Aaron, go check out Aaron Civil War Travels. The way to support him is just by liking, following, subscribing his pages.
Yep.
Comment ideas to him. Aaron loves doing those videos, and he loves that people love watching them. So
No money involved. I just enjoy doing them.
exactly. So that's Aaron's plug there. If you want to support us, become a member of the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation. Your membership helps support preservation, and which in turn helps support this podcast. So become a member. We just came out with our end of the 2023 end of the year Shenandoah at War magazine.
And the calendar.
And the calendars. The
That's a nice
amazing
calendar. I
22.
got that.
Oh, member Elijah over here. Fellow member Elijah got his
a lot
calendar.
of great pictures in
So
there.
if you become a member now, like if you do it now, which
Now.
like December of 2023, I can only guarantee it for December of 2023. Maybe a week into January 2024, but I'm only guaranteeing December 2023. If you become a member of the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation, company level membership is $35. That's like one trip to Starbucks. If you can lock that in,
It's a steal.
you will get a great letter from our good man Franklin, who will be on the podcast at some
Only if
point
it's
in time.
handwritten by him.
Yeah. And you'll get our calendar and our magazine. So I can guarantee you'll get those
And
if
you
you
get-
become a member. And you'll get next year's too, which
You'll
is the
get
crazy thing, too.
notifications about the conferences, things. I believe as a member you get a
You
little
get
bit
discounts
Yeah.
at those events, at our conferences
and our conferences
Valley-wide
are pretty
programs.
good. So.
Yeah, pretty top-notch stuff.
Yeah.
So just go ahead and do that, and you'll be our best friends. So, yeah, we appreciate you all listening, liking, interacting with us. This is a lot of fun for us to do. This is like Aaron's 100th time on here, so you're kind of just an honorary Coco host.
Coco.
But we appreciate, we hope everyone enjoys a Merry Christmas and a happy holiday season. We'll be coming with one more episode for the end of 2023 here. I think right after Christmas or before Christmas.
Something like that.
Something like that. Towards the end of the month, our
Close to it.
last episode of the year. So we appreciate you guys walking this mile with us to the end of the year. This has been a fun experience for both Elijah and I. Any final thoughts on the Bowman Brothers small batch?
Fantastic bourbon. If you haven't tried it, get it. And anything else you can find from Bowman, whether it be their small batch, port finished, or the single barrel. I mean, if you're lucky enough to find the John Jay, do it. Get as many as you can. Treat yourself. And last thing, just if you are listening to this and you enjoyed this episode, just give us a review on Apple Podcasts,
Those
or
help
Spotify.
us.
5 stars, whatever you want, whatever you think we did for you.
I mean, we think we did 6, but you can't do that.
course,
So
of
just
course.
go ahead and
I
give
think
us
those
a
are only
5.
the episodes I'm on.
But provide your feedback. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
And it helps us bring more good content to you. But at the end of the day, we just appreciate your support.
Yeah, and share us as well. Share us on Facebook and Instagram, and share the podcast around. Let people listen. And if you have any ideas, like Elijah said, just hit us up at our emails or just in the comments of stuff. Just let us know what you'd like to hear and what you'd like us to review. We're always open to ideas, and
We're working on the stickers. Don't worry. I promise. We're
Yeah,
working on them.
we
haven't forgotten about you.
What episode was that? It was the archaeology
It
episode.
was the archaeology episode.
If
It was
you-
2 episodes ago.
2 episodes ago, if you listen to that all the way through, there was a secret word in there. I'm not going to say it. And if you emailed that word to us, you would receive a sticker. We're working on that. We got full-time jobs. This is a little fun side thing. We're getting to it, guys. We're getting to the stickers. So bear with us on that. But if you haven't listened to that episode and you want to get in on the fun, go ahead and listen to that all the way through. We won't even give you a time stamp of when to go to. You got to listen to the whole thing to figure it out. If it's like in the middle or is it at the beginning, you'll never know until you listen. So go ahead and do that. If you like a free sticker, that's the archaeology episode. That episode was a lot of fun. And Nick's episode, last episode.
A lot of cool artifacts in that one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Non-dug stuff. Just cool stuff.
So go ahead and listen to our other stuff, and leave us a review. We really appreciate you all hanging in there with us, listening to this, and you all make it fun and make it enjoyable for all of us. So thank you again, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.